Right off the bat, the first thing any real Toyota fan notices about the 2022 Tundra is that it's missing a V8 engine. Instead, this year's model comes with a twin-turbo V6 or a hybrid V6. This definitely helps with fuel economy, but let's be real. If you need a Tundra for work purposes, you want to prioritize a strong workhorse with power and performance, and you'll care less about EPA ratings or green energy. Today I'm talking about the top things you really need to know before buying the 2022 Toyota Tundra. In the year 2000, when Toyota first released the Tundra, it was the first ever full-size pickup built by any Japanese car maker in North America. To this day, the Tundra is only built and sold in North America. It's been a staple in the trucking community for more than 20 years. Now, 20 years might sound like a lot, but actually, Toyota's American roots aren't really deep when it comes to full-size trucks, when you're comparing it to its largest competitors like Ford, Chevy, and Dodge. Toyota initially produced the Tundra in Indiana. Later, production moved to the Toyota plant in San Antonio, Texas. That was in 2008, and that's where they're still manufactured at the same plant that Tacomas used to be made in. No, the Tacomas are made in Mexico. Not many people know this, but the word Tundra actually came after a lawsuit. Kind of fitting, given that America is the land of lawsuits. The story goes that Toyota originally wanted to call the truck the T150 because it replaced their smaller truck, the T100. Believe it or not, Ford actually sued Toyota saying that the name T150 was too similar to their well-known F-150 series. So Toyota reconsidered and bowed out, and that's how the Tundra was born. Historically, the Tundras have always come with the option of either a V8 or a V6. But now, this new 2022 model kicks off the third generation. Toyota completely redesigned the truck, and for the first time ever, consumers do not have an option for a V8 at all. It's a bit ironic, actually, because when Tundra was first introduced, Americans hailed it for its V8. In fact, Toyota deliberately made the Tundra to replace the T100, which only came with a V6. Now, it's as if they're going in reverse. Beep, beep, beep. So, will this be a deal breaker for some? If you're wondering what the big deal is anyway, well, whether Toyota nixing the V8 is good news for you or not depends on the type of vehicle you really need. At the end of the day, that's the bottom line. If you're driving around a family every day for general daily use, then a V6 is fine. One of the biggest advantages of a V6 is that it has less cylinders than a V8, so it weighs less. Less weight means it's less nose heavy, which means better navigation and acceleration. In other words, it's easier to manage your corners, curves, and turns. If you time your acceleration correctly, you'll notice an improved performance compared to the V8. That's because the V6 has less tendency to fade or drift to the outside. If you were to get a V6 instead of a V8, you'd also have the advantage of fuel economy, and no one would reject that given today's gas prices. V8s, on the other hand, are really thirsty beasts. Another advantage to the V6 is the fact that it has fewer parts compared to the V8 design. Fewer parts mean less maintenance, and less maintenance means less stress. True, there can still be expensive problems that will happen to a V6. Look, it's not perfect, but when it comes to the overall lifetime expense, in general, V6s will be less to repair in the long run. Point is, for light or general everyday passenger use, you're not going to lose out on anything necessarily by choosing a V6 over a V8. But let's compare the output of a V6 versus V8 in general. Take the Ram 1500, for example. A Ram 1500 with a standard 3.6-liter V6 engine can output 305 horsepower and 269 pound-feet of torque, and it has a towing capacity of 7,730 pounds. The Ram 1500 with a 5.7 Hemi V8 will give you 395 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. Without its e-torque feature, the V8 can tow more than 11,600 pounds. So you see, a V6-powered truck can't tow as much as a V8-powered one. That all said, there are some high-quality SUVs on the market today that can tow large weights without requiring the V8 under the hood. Take the Ford Expedition EcoBoost, for example. It can tow up to a whopping 9,200 pounds. That's all thanks to its 460 pound-feet of torque. This vehicle actually has the highest tow rating of its classification within the V4 to V8 class. Did you know that back in the day, V6 muscle cars were actually pretty sad and slow, to say the least? Anything other than a V8 engine was considered embarrassing. But today, it's a completely different story. Cars like Camaro that actually feature V6s produce decent power. And today's automatic transmissions are more up to the task than they used to be. Even Land Rover has transformed their lineup, mostly V8 engines, to the V6 variety. You can still work with the manufacturer to upgrade your vehicle if you want to, but their V6 engines still give you horsepower and torque that the average daily driver needs. But now, if you're not an average driver, this is a different story. For example, let's say your work requires you to use a workhorse every day. Well, in that case, a V6 is probably not the engine for you. If you regularly need to pull heavy equipment with your truck, a V8 engine will be more efficient. Really, the top reason why anyone should choose a V8 over a V6 is because of the advantage when it comes to hauling something. A V8 provides the necessary torque and balance. The rear torque ratios of V8 are designed for optimal towing performance. Many drivers also say the V8 produces a smoother and quieter ride than a V6. Can a V6 truck get your job done? Maybe. But there would be an extra unpleasant factor you might want to consider, like noise. If you're dead set on getting a V6, then your best bet to getting anywhere close to towing power of a V8 is to have an upgraded V6 diesel. If you commute to your work site with a lot of equipment on your truck, large SUV or cargo van, then you need the power a V8 provides. You get a better launch off the line or an improved start with a heavy load. Only a small handful of V6 sports cars and trucks come even close to creating the power of a V8. Now let's jump back to towing for a bit. Not many people know this, but historically many full-size truck makers bloated their towing ratings. Naturally, this created a lot of confusion among consumers. So the Society of Automotive Engineers, or SAE for short, created standards for vehicle towing. Basically, it was a series of tests to determine the real towing capacity of a truck. That was back in 2010. It's called J2807, and it applies to vehicles up to 14,000 gross vehicle weight. Believe it or not, when these standards came out initially, the Tundra was the only full-size truck on the market that was J2807 compliant. Toyota called it the Truth in Towing Standard. Initially, many other truck makers refused to use the standard, and suffice to say they received criticism. Since then, there are other trucks on the market today that are also J2807 compliant. If you're wondering why this year's Toyota Tundra doesn't have a V8 option, well, previously there were iterations of the Tundra that did. In fact, previously it came with a 5.7-liter V8 that was capable of generating 381 horsepower. But that doesn't mean the V8s are completely dead, at least not yet. The factory in Japan will allegedly continue to produce a V8 for a few vehicles that still need them. But this wasn't a long-term plan to begin with. So why nix the V8? Well, Toyota ditched it simply because they decided it wasn't ideal or necessary since they're gas guzzlers. The V8 only gets 13 miles a gallon in the city and 17 miles a gallon on the highway. So you can see that is dismal. But being unnecessary wasn't the only bad news for the V8. There are also the EPA's fuel economy standards. Last year, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA for short, released some stricter and more aggressive fuel economy standards. They stated that officially their goal was to promote electrification. But if you ask me, all that did was encourage more cars to have smaller engines that are just turbocharged. And these won't come anywhere close to what we need to haul and tow heavy loads. It's not like-for-like performance capabilities required of the V8. Now, by the 2026 model year, automakers will have to meet or exceed the fleet-wide average of 55 miles per gallon for cars and light trucks, all thanks to the EPA. During the Trump administration, we had a 43 miles per gallon standard that was set for the 2026 model year. So you can see the standard has only gone up since then. The EPA defended itself by saying this move will save drivers here in the U.S. somewhere between $210 billion and $420 billion in fuel costs. And that'll supposedly be all the way through 2050. If you're thinking, yeah, right. Well, the EPA firmly believes that by the year 2026, consumers will save up to $1,000 by buying an EV over the lifetime of their vehicle. And if you think the EPA has done well, you're in for a surprise. They aren't finished with their plans by a long shot. They also announced a plan to initiate a separate round of legislation for new multi-pollutant emission standards using the Clean Air Act. And these standards will target 2027 model year vehicles. So what's the point? Well, President Biden announced an executive order called Strengthening American Leadership in Clean Cars and Trucks, which is geared toward getting cars and light trucks in the U.S. as close to zero tailpipe emissions as possible. But this isn't something that's being passed through the U.S. Congress. It's a legislation through an executive order and administrative law. That means you got a small group of people with the power and authority to decide on the future of your car. They can even decide on what kinds of vehicles you're allowed to own or what can be under their hoods. But let's return to the 2022 Toyota Tundra. Sure, it doesn't have a V8 engine, but Toyota actually completely redesigned and engineered the Tundra for the 2022 model year. And here's one re-engineering feat in the Tundra that's got everybody talking. Toyota was able to bump the Toyota's max towing capacity from 10,200 pounds to 12,000 pounds. That means the Tundra can tow more than the heavy-duty Nissan Titan XD. So does that make the 2022 Tundra a heavy-duty truck? Well, the answer will surprise you. Heavy-duty trucks are not actually classified by their tow rating. They're classified by their gross vehicle weight rating, or GVWR for short. GVWR means that combined weight of the truck and its maximum payload is above 8,500 pounds. Now, the all-new Toyota Tundra can haul between 1,500 975, 1,940 pounds in its bed. That's a far cry from the heavy-duty truck payload requirement. That means that technically the 2022 Tundra is still a light-duty ton truck. It's not heavy-duty like that F-250, Ram 2500, and up. But being a light truck doesn't mean that the Tundra is completely useless. The 2022 Toyota Tundra does have some noteworthy features worth mentioning. The 2022 Tundra is among the first Toyota vehicles ever to take advantage of connected technologies with a completely redesigned multimedia system. You have the option of either a standard 8-inch or 14-inch touchscreen panel. You can interact with this interface through touch, sight, and voice. Its native navigation system is entirely cloud-based, which means you can get real-time over-the-air updates. And the Toyota's voice assistant is advanced with a wider range of natural voice-activated responses. Saying anything from hi to yo can get the attention. Personally, I'm undecided on that for now. But anyway, we'll see how customers feel about this new system. But now, you tell me, if you're a truck fan, does the absence of a V8 prevent you from considering a Tundra? Please share by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.